Right, so Israel has discovered a new definition of generosity. Let the food in, but only if it's priced beyond the reach of the starving. Some of Gaza's markets now resemble almost normality, lined with fruit and flour that exist not to feed people, but to feed propaganda. Tel Aviv gets to boast, see, there is food. What famine? Such claims are Hamas lies. Or while children walk past bread they'll never get to taste. Teased in the cruelest way possible as their bellies rumble and they stagger from weakness. It's a kind of stunt that would be denounced as barbarism if someone like Assad had tried it, or as a crime against humanity if it had been Putin. But when Israel does it, the headlines get sanded down to complex access issues. This isn't famine hidden from view, it's famine being flaunted, famine being mocked, a famine dressed up as plenty. So the question arises of all of Israel's deliberate acts now. Could this be the cruelest they've pulled yet? Right, so there are crimes of war that sear themselves into memory because they strip away every excuse, every mask, every fog of ambiguity. Gaza is living through one of them right now, but the media is paying scant attention to it. Some of the markets are full of food. Shelves are stacked with rice and flour, sacks of lentils, tins of tuna, sometimes even fresh fruit arranged into neat and tidy little pyramids. Photographs prove it. In Rafah or Deir al-Balah, you could at first glance believe you were walking through any other bustling Middle Eastern bazaar. But the moment you step closer, the truth shatters the illusion. Families pass those stalls empty-handed. Parents hear their children beg for bread and have to tell them no. Food is visible, but it's unreachable. It's a mirage within arm's length. And Israel, the occupying power that controls every crossing and every truck, points to those stalls and says, look, there's food there. There's no famine. The world's lying about us. It's not incompetence, it's not chaos, it's a deliberate cruelty. A stunt so depraved, it should be studied as a textbook example of cruelty disguised as generosity. Israel has refused to allow sufficient free humanitarian aid into Gaza. It has allowed only commercial imports. Trucks carrying goods to be sold for profit, not distributed to the hungry, knowing few can afford it. And since Gaza's economy is shattered, no jobs, no salaries, no functioning banks, families cannot pay. The result is a famine performed in plain sight, a famine where markets become a performance, food becomes a prop, and starvation is mocked by the illusion of plenty. The United Nations' own report confirms the mechanics. The Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs noted that since August, only limited commercial truck entries, mainly dry foods, have been permitted through Zikkim crossing. Not aid convoys, not the flour sacks that would feed families for free. Dry goods to stock shelves for sale. The World Food Programme has said bakeries have shut down for lack of flour and fuel. Community kitchens are out of food to cook. It's been reported that prices have spiked by over 1,400%. Flour is now more expensive than meat. Vegetables turned into luxury items. Profiteers raising prices beyond imagination, all while aid itself that might get in ends up diverted and ends up being resold in those same markets at these inflated rates. Every piece fits. OCHA confirms famine has been ongoing in Gaza City since July. The World Food Programme describes an entire population pushed to the brink. Human Rights Watch calls it what it is. Israel is using starvation of civilians as a method of warfare. This is not tragedy of circumstance, this is war crime. And yet when you turn to the mainstream press, you get euphemism. And that's if they report it at all. Rising food prices, humanitarian access issues, complex conditions at crossings. You get Palestinian voices as alternatives, though, like those of Ahmad Abushawish, who wrote in Al Jazeera recently that markets are full while we starve. That is how silence works. If Bashar al-Assad had pulled this trick in Aleppo, it would have been a front-page scandal. If Vladimir Putin had staged this in Mariupol, the word famine would have been splashed across every Western broadsheet in bold. But Israel does it in Gaza, and the story is filed away as commentary if it gets covered at all. To see why this matters, you have to feel the psychological violence of it. It's one thing to be deprived of food altogether. It's another to see food all around you and know it is not yours. A child staring at bread within its reach, yet they cannot touch it. A parent has to explain to that child that that bread might as well be on another planet. Hunger gnaws at them, but humiliation wounds deeper. And that is the cruelty Israel is perfecting here. Not just starving people, but forcing them to watch as food sits just meters away while they starve. Turning survival into an illusion, into a fantasy, turning famine into a mockery. And this cruelty actually has a history. In 2012, leaked documents showed Israeli officials calculating the minimum calories needed for Gazans to avoid outright starvation while still being malnourished. The so-called red lines policy. Gaza was to be put on a diet. It was bureaucratized cruelty, reduced to numbers on a page. Then the method was scarcity. Now the method is all performance. Then the shelves were empty. Now they are full, but untouchable. The facade's fallen away. It's shattered. Human Rights Watch says Israel's actions ticks every box in the definition of a war crime. And the law is not vague on this either. Article 54 of Additional Protocol 1 to the Geneva Conventions bans the use of starvation against civilians. The Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court codifies it as a prosecutable offence. Israel's blockade, calibrated to allow only commercial goods, is not an accident of war. It is a textbook example of the crime those laws were written to prevent. And yet how many editors are spelling that out? How many anchors are saying it out loud? Tumbleweed. The failure of coverage is not neutral, it's complicity, because euphemism does not merely soften this story, it becomes part of the stunt. Israel waves a photo of a market stall. Western media prints food available but unaffordable, as if that is it and the lie holds. The facade of plenty remains intact. Only the lies like Abu Shawish writing from the ground show the curtain being pulled back. His phrase, "markets full while we starve," punctures that illusion. It is simple, it is human, it is unignorable, which is why it is so dangerous to Israel and why it is buried as opinion if covered at all. But while Israel polishes its lies, polishes the turd of its lies, the regional landscape shifts under its feet. For decades, Israel's fallback defence has been indispensability. Gulf monarchies needed its covert security guarantees. Washington needed its alliance. That shielded Israel from accountability. But now Saudi Arabia signed a mutual defence pact with Pakistan, so Riyadh is no longer turning to Washington or Tel Aviv for its survival. It's turned to Islamabad, a nuclear power, military heavyweight, a state beyond American veto. I'll cover this story in another video out tonight. At the same time, Iran and Saudi Arabia are deepening their coordination. Ali Larijani's visit to Riyadh was more than optics, it was substance, cementing a thaw that began under Chinese mediation back in 2023. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi met with his Saudi counterpart Faisal bin Farhan, with the Saudi-Pakistan pact as backdrop, a triangle forming between Riyadh, Islamabad and Tehran, once unimaginable, now very real, and Israel does not feature in it anywhere. Why does that matter for Gaza, though? Because Israel's stunt markets full, people starving, it's not just about Gaza. It's about a narrative that Israel is desperate to control. For decades, Israel relied on the West to parrot its denials, but as Saudi Arabia and Pakistan align, as Iran strengthens its hand, Israel's propaganda shield cracks. Rivals can now point to Gaza and say, here is Israel's democracy, here is its morality, starving children in front of piles of food. What the West buries, the region broadcasts. What Western anchors euphemize, Riyadh and Tehran will arguably make very obvious, weaponizing it. The stunt meant to prove Israeli resilience risks blowing up in its face. And the facade of plenty collapses into proof of famine instead. But then this raises a rather haunting question. If famine with food in sight is not enough to provoke outrage, what on earth is? If children starving to death in front of piles of fruit and vegetables is not enough to command headlines, what is? And the fact that this question even has to be asked is part of the depressing crime, isn't it? History will not record this as a tragic accident. It will not describe it as rising food prices or complex access issues like our media are. It'll record it as a deliberate stunt, a war crime, an act of humiliation masquerading as claims to the contrary. It will remember Gaza's markets not as places of commerce, but as performative cruelty. It will remember Western silence not as oversight, but as participation, and it will remember those who spoke, Palestinians like Abu Shawish, as the ones who told the truth while the world looked away. The regional context only sharpens the irony. As Israel clings to the lie of stocked markets, it loses its grip on the alliances that once protected it. Saudi Arabia hedges with Pakistan, Iran builds ties with Riyadh, and Israel, for all its propaganda, is still left exposed, just with more people even more disgusted at them. What was meant to be a stunt of control has become a spectacle of weakness. The optics it hoped would absolve it instead of condemned it. And so we end where we began. A child stands in Gaza, in front of a stall with bread on it. The bread is within sight, within reach, but it's not theirs. Around them the world debates whether famine even exists, though, whether access is sufficient, whether the numbers add up. But the child does not need those numbers. The child knows the truth. The hunger is in their stomach and the humiliation is in their heart. That is the crime. That is the stunt. That is the cruelty. So here's the dangling question, the one the world cannot seem to answer. Why are Gaza's markets full, while Gaza's people starve. And until we face the truth of that, until we say it out loud, until we refuse to let silence mask it, we're all part of the cruelty too. If you didn't catch the decimation of Israel's normalization hopes in my other video from tonight with regards to that defense deal between Saudi Arabia and Pakistan, do check it out here. My coverage of those events and the kick in the teeth for Netanyahu as it is your suggested next watch. Please do also hit like, share and subscribe if you haven't done so already, so as to ensure you don't miss out on all new daily content, as well as spreading the word and helping to support the channel at the same time, which is very much appreciated, holding power to account for ordinary working class people, and I'll hopefully catch you on the next vid. Cheers, folks.